Watch closely. The man's hands are wandering all over the woman's body, but he wasn't taking advantage. He was looking for the ring she had on her. This is a high-end banquet organized by a vampire society, with most members being high society elites and ancient vampires. Elijah, as a member of the Originals bloodline, has also arrived at the event with his female companion. The presence of the Originals creates a sense of pressure that causes those around them to steal glances. Aya introduces her mentor, Mohinder, to Marcel. Mohinder is a highly principled vampire who only drinks the blood of his defeated opponents and dislikes shaking hands with others. Marcel soon spots Haley and Elijah dancing gracefully in the center of the dance floor. Elijah quickly realizes that Marcel is being recruited into the strict society as a new member. Tristan appears among the crowd, and with his hint, Marcel suddenly notices that his daylight ring has gone missing at some point. Tristan informs Marcel that he must find the thief before dawn. If he succeeds, he will become a member of the Strix. If he fails, he will be killed. Klaus calls Freya, telling her that they've lost track of Lucien's prophecy witch, and asks her to cast a locator spell to help. Freya rushes over, sets up a ritual, and the fine black sand moves across the map. Quickly locking onto a location, they discover that Alexis has been captured by Tristan. Lucien comments that breaking into a mansion full of vampires will be difficult. Klaus, however, doesn't seem concerned at all. Elijah, worried that Marcel might run into trouble, states that he'll step in to help him, even if it means ruining the evening suit he's kept in pristine condition for 100 years. Marcel wants Elijah to trust him, saying that this is his chance to infiltrate the enemy's ranks. He then finds Aya, and together they head to a secluded hallway. Without warning, Marcel pulls Aya close and starts kissing her, his hands wandering all over her body. Aya pushes Marcel away, stating that she doesn't have his daylight ring on her. A commotion erupts in the crowd as Lucien and Klaus, pretending to be drunk, appear with women on both arms, drawing everyone's attention. Disguised as a guest, Freya seizes the opportunity to slip upstairs. She pushes open a door and successfully finds Alexis, directly stating her purpose, but Alexis says she doesn't need protection. She has already seen every outcome of the prophecy.
I watched them burn. Lucien is doomed.
Freya says there's no time for this, and they must leave. Alexis casts a spell that renders Freya unable to speak, then without a word, kisses Freya on the lips. Using the moment to peer into her past and future, Alexis releases Freya and tells her that the family she yearns for will become her disaster. But Alexis' behavior angers Freya, who punches her in the face. Meanwhile, downstairs, Lucien and Klaus cause a ruckus, ridiculing everyone at the party before making their exit. Marcel and Haley gather together, whispering quietly, but Aya interrupts them and invites Marcel upstairs. Tristan shortens the deadline, demanding that Marcel identify the thief on the spot. Prepared for this, Marcel declares that it was Aya who took his daylight ring when they linked arms to enter the venue, and she later passed it off to someone else while introducing Mohinder. Marcel guessed correctly. Mohinder revealed the ring in response, but Tristan says that Marcel must defeat the one holding the ring to complete the challenge. The crowd parts to create a space for the duel, facing a vampire several centuries older than himself. Marcel is naturally no match for Mohinder. The two exchange blows for several rounds, with Mohinder eventually sinking his fangs into Marcel's neck. Elijah moves to intervene but is stopped by Haley. Mohinder then aims a stake at Marcel's throat, but Marcel remains unafraid, declaring that his blood is laced with werewolf venom. He had Haley bite his arm while Klaus was causing a scene at the party. Mohinder was defeated, but Marcel chose not to kill him, saying that the members of the Strix wanted Mohinder dead, but he refused to be their tool for murder. Marcel collapses into Haley's arms. Marcel's actions impress everyone present. Tristan flashes a pleased smile and casually rips out Mohinder's heart, then announces that Marcel has successfully joined the Strix. Marcel finds Klaus to ask for the antidote. Klaus is displeased at being treated like a walking cure, but Marcel insists that he's helping him.
Whoever comes for you, comes for me. That's all I need to know.
Impressed by Marcel's loyalty, Klaus bites his wrist and hands it to Marcel. Alexis then reveals the prophecy to everyone before extending her wrist to Haley, indicating that she should drink her blood. Haley sits down beside Alexis. Both Haley and Elijah bite into Alexis's arms simultaneously. A prophetic vision flashes before Alexis's eyes, but Haley and Elijah spit out the blood at once, stating that it's poisoned. Alexis falls dead on the spot.
Now how did you manage to capture the scent of a summer's day?
A love confession made 1,000 years ago has now become the key piece of evidence in solving a case. This is because Klaus's first love from 1,000 years ago, Aurora, has arrived in New Orleans, but Aurora is a bit unhinged. She first beguiles a human to deliver a blood-soaked love letter, inviting Klaus to play a game of hide-and-seek with her. Elijah hesitantly admits that he has a secret about Aurora that he needs to confess to his brother. However, Klaus, who has just reconciled with Elijah, doesn't want to disturb the peace they've achieved by fighting side by side. Klaus insists that no secret is more important than the current threat to their family, and whatever Elijah has done in the past, he will be forgiven. The two of them walk down the street. When a bottle of perfume catches Klaus's attention, he grabs it, flips it over, and notices a small, delicate flower wreath symbol on the bottom. In a flash, Klaus disappears, leaving Elijah standing alone. Klaus quickly arrives at a shop with the same flower wreath on its door, where Aurora is waiting for him. Lovers who have been separated for thousands of years meet again, but the picture doesn't seem to be that cozy. Klaus suspects that Elijah's secret is that he and Aurora had an affair, but Aurora says she was never with Elijah, and she brings up the intimate gifts she and Klaus once exchanged. The story flashes back to 1,000 years ago. Klaus had brought flowers to celebrate Aurora's birthday, only to find his girlfriend weeping. Aurora's mother had died giving birth to her, making every birthday a painful reminder, as Aurora believed she had killed her mother. To comfort her, Klaus shared his own secret. He had killed his own mother and framed his father for the crime, then fled with all his siblings. They promised to keep each other's secrets, never to speak of them to a third person. Klaus doesn't want to dwell on these old memories and asks Aurora why she's come to New Orleans. Aurora says she's here to protect her, the Originals, Rebekah, but Klaus responds that Rebekah may not trust her anymore. After all, it was Aurora who exploited Rebekah's kindness to achieve her own ends. Aurora had gone so far as to harm herself, forcing the kind-hearted Rebekah to save her with her own blood. Aurora had feigned heartbreak and a suicide attempt to gain Rebekah's sympathy, but after Rebekah left, Aurora climbed up to a high window and decisively jumped, ending her life and successfully transforming into a vampire. The look in Klaus's eyes makes it clear he doesn't hold much affection for this ex-girlfriend, but Aurora remains convinced that Klaus has always loved her, even though Klaus has been absent from her life for nearly 1,000 years. Aurora, filled with nostalgia and regret, reminisces about the loving moments they shared, then leans in and kisses Klaus on the lips. Though Aurora continuously professes her love for Klaus, he hasn't forgotten that it was Aurora herself who ended their relationship 1,000 years ago. When the whereabouts of the Michelson siblings began to be exposed, they decided to abandon their life of luxury and flee overnight. Klaus hurried to find Aurora, pleading with her to leave with him, but Aurora's expression changed, and she lashed out at him with cruel words, saying she could never love a monster who killed his own mother. Every word stabbed Klaus in the heart like a blade, and he had no choice but to leave in tears, unable to forget the pain even after a millennium. But then, Aurora revealed a shocking truth. Before Klaus found her, she had gone to see Elijah first, hoping to leave with the Michelson siblings. Elijah refused her, and angry Aurora bragged that she was the closest to Klaus because she knew secrets that even Elijah didn't. Elijah used his vampire compulsion to make Aurora reveal the secret of Klaus killing their mother. He was shocked by the revelation, and in his grief and disappointment, Elijah compelled Aurora once more, making her reject Klaus's plea and hurt him with her words. This was Elijah's punishment for his brother's matricide and deceit. This was the secret Elijah had intended to confess to Klaus. Aurora reminded Klaus of the mysterious prophecy, in which one of them would be killed by a family member. That family member could very well be Elijah. Elijah, having been abandoned by his brother, sought out Marcel, only to learn a startling piece of news. Marcel's informant saw Tristan enter a secret passage, which led to a warehouse, and the owner of that warehouse was none other than Lucien. Marcel pointed out that if they weren't secretly negotiating a truce, then they must have been allied from the start, and their supposed rivalry was nothing but a lie. Furious, Klaus stormed back home, and Elijah quickly realized that he knew the truth. Klaus accused his brother of being the greatest betrayer of his life. The two brothers, having only just reconciled, were at each other's throats again. Elijah reminded Klaus that they still had common enemies. Klaus blames his brother for making him what he is today. The two continued to fight, and Klaus bit down on his brother's wrist. This sent Elijah into a rage.
I have carried you for centuries, Niklas. No more.
Davina is preparing for the annual witches' ritual, where she will publicly receive the coven's offerings. Fearing an attack, She hired Jackson and his wife as her bodyguards for a hefty fee. Jackson takes charge of perimeter security, immediately diving into his duties. Haley, on the other hand, promises to protect Davina up close. After taking some fashion advice from a friend, Davina switched to a blue scarf. Feeling nauseous at the sight of the various small animals presented to her by the coven, Davina makes an excuse to leave the ceremony. Haley finds her in a secluded corner. Davina said that she had always respected tradition, believing that by wearing the former regent's scarf and accepting the offerings of livestock, she would earn the respect of the majority, but things never turned out the way she hoped. Haley pointed out that she was running away, disguising herself as the person everyone expected, while hiding her true self. She added that if Davina kept wearing the old woman's scarf, she'd only end up with the livestock the old woman was offered. Finally, a long-lost smile appears on Davina's face. Amidst the festive atmosphere, Jackson notices Van chanting a spell and steps in to stop him.
Hey!
Jackson single-handedly took on and defeated Davina's 3 opponents, then dragged Van in front of her. Davina accuses Van of attempting to kill a regent, but Jackson hands her the doll Van was using for the spell. Van simply wants Davina to acknowledge what she has done. Davina declares Van innocent, urging him to join her in leading the witches to prosperity, but Van, unable to bow to the enemy of his mother, walks away without looking back. After this incident, the relationship between Davina and the werewolf couple improves. She tells Haley that she has asked the ancestral witches to remove the werewolf curse, and the ancestors have agreed. Davina gently blows out the candle, and Haley remains in her human form. Davina would much rather have a friend than the werewolf couple as slaves at her beck and call. Meanwhile, the worst police duo in history hasn't been idle. Camille doesn't believe in Lucien's innocence and teams up with Vincent to keep an eye on him, but their surveillance skills are terrible. While they're busy chatting, Lucien vanishes in the blink of an eye, and in the next blink, Camille herself is gone too. Vincent is left completely bewildered. Lucien drags Camille into an alley and reminds her that he's already been cleared of suspicion, but Camille retorts, "If you harm me, Klaus might not be too pleased." Lucien vanishes in a flash. However, Camille soon discovers the body of a new murder victim at the bottom of a nearby staircase. She cradles the victim in her arms, but it seems it's already too late. Night has fallen, and the police have already cordoned off the crime scene, but Detective Kinney is puzzled by Camille's presence at the scene, and his suspicion of her grows even stronger. Camille has no interest in dealing with him. Camille shows Vincent the inheritance her uncle left her, a vast collection of dark magic artifacts that leaves Vincent stunned. As they chat, Kinney arrives with a search warrant. He informs Camille that the only fingerprints found on the victim belong to her. Combined with her collection of these items, Camille is formally arrested as a suspect in the crime. Klaus and Elijah, disheveled and worn, are finally reconciling. Klaus is honestly catching his own blood in a cup to treat his brother's bite. Freya gives them a blank stare. After a cathartic bout of violence, both brothers have vented their pent-up anger. Elijah declares that they have peacefully resolved their past conflicts and together decide that Lucien and Tristan must be eliminated. Klaus agrees and seals their truce with a toast. Rebekah, meanwhile, has been off on her own, searching for a way to resurrect Cole. And finally, she has found a lead. Freya teleports her consciousness over to talk to her sister. The two share a few drinks, reassuring each other of their safety, and Freya's consciousness returns safely to New Orleans. But Rebekah is suddenly confronted by a vampire blocking her path. As Rebekah focuses on dealing with the enemy in front of her, Aya sneaks up from behind and slashes her throat. Rebekah lies on the ground, unable to move, and gradually loses her vitals. After a refreshing sleep, Elijah begins his plans to deal with Tristan, but he's worried that Klaus, who left early to meet an old lover, might be deceived. Freya can't understand why those three harbor such intense hatred and hostility toward the original brothers. Elijah is forced to admit that he once used the three as bait to distract Michael. He made them believe that Lucien was Klaus, Aurora was Rebekah, and Tristan was himself. They spent centuries on the run from Michael, only realizing they had been pawns after Elijah was forced into his long sleep. Elijah tried to pour Freya a sobering tonic, but her hands wouldn't stop trembling, causing the cup to slip and shatter on the floor. Freya immediately realizes that something has happened to Rebekah. Rebekah awakens inside a coffin. She returns to her lifeless body to search for her phone, but Aya catches her in the act. Aya said she was ordered to deal with any Michael son who was acting alone. More and more vampires begin to close in, but Rebekah doesn't consider these fledglings a threat. However, as she's still adjusting to her body, she barely manages to win a few rounds. soon piling the ground with vampire corpses. Undeterred, Aya quickly calls in reinforcements. Freya's soul comes through again. Aya strikes quickly but misses, only to find Freya using magic to incapacitate the entire group. Rebekah, now free, wastes no time. She's already contacted a witch who knows the resurrection spell, and she decides to go meet her first. The sisters arrive at the witch's home and successfully locate the spell Rebekah has long sought, but they've walked right into the witch's trap. The witch and Aya emerge one after the other. Rebekah has been deceived. The pages containing the spell instantly burst into flames, and the witch traps Rebekah within a magical circle, forcing her to her knees. Unable to move, Freya's magic is rendered completely useless. Aya steps forward, pulling out a dagger, explaining that it will put Rebekah into a deep sleep. Then, she slowly plunges the dagger into Rebekah's heart.